Donald Trump, born June 14, 1946, New York, U.S. 45th President of the United States, 2017 to 21. Trump was a real estate developer and businessman who owned, managed, or licensed his name to hotels, casinos, golf courses, resorts, and residential properties in the New York City area and around the world. From the 1980s, Trump also lent his name to scores of retail ventures, including branded lines of clothing, cologne, food, and furniture, and to Trump University, which offered seminars in real estate education from 2005 to 2010. In the early 21st century, his private conglomerate, the Trump Organization, comprised some 500 companies involved in a wide range of businesses, including hotels and resorts, residential properties, merchandise, and entertainment and television. Trump was the third president in U.S. history, after Andrew Johnson in 1868 and Bill Clinton in 1998, to be impeached by the U.S. House of Representatives, and the only president to be impeached twice, once, in 2019, for abuse of power and obstruction of Congress in connection with the Ukraine scandal, and once, in 2021, for incitement of insurrection, in connection with the storming of the United States Capitol by a violent mob of Trump supporters as Congress met in joint session to ceremonially count Electoral College votes from the 2020 presidential election. Both of Trump's impeachments ended in his acquittal by the U.S. Senate. Trump lost the 2020 election to former Vice President Joe Biden by 306 electoral votes to 232. He lost the popular vote by more than 7 million votes. In March 2023, Trump was indicted by a Manhattan grand jury on state criminal charges related to a hush money payment made in 2016 to adult film star Stormy Daniels, who claimed to have had an affair with Trump in 2006. See below. Post-presidential activities. The indictment marked the first time in U.S. history that a former president was charged with a crime. In June 2023, Trump was indicted by a grand jury in Miami on federal criminal charges related to his removal of classified documents from the White House upon leaving office and his retention of them at Mar-a-Lago, his resort and residence in Palm Beach, Florida. The indictment marked the first time in U.S. history that a former president was charged with a federal crime. In August 2023, Trump was indicted by a grand jury in Washington, D.C., on federal criminal charges related to his efforts to overturn the 2020 presidential election. The indictment charged him with obstruction of an official proceeding and 3 counts of conspiracy to obstruct an official proceeding, to defraud the United States, and to impede the free exercise of the right to vote and to have one's vote counted. Later that month, Trump and 18 of his associates were indicted by a grand jury in Fulton County, Georgia, on criminal charges related to Trump's efforts to reverse Biden's electoral victory in the state. Early life and business career. Trump was the fourth of 5 children of Fred Christ Trump, a successful real estate developer, and Mary McLeod. Donald's eldest sister, Marion Trump Berry, eventually served as a U.S. District Court judge, 1983 to 99, and later as a judge on the U.S. Court of Appeals for the Third Circuit until her retirement in 2011. His elder brother, Frederick, Jr., Freddie, worked briefly for his father's business before becoming an airline pilot in the 1960s. Freddie's alcoholism led to his early death in 1981 at the age of 43. Beginning in the late 1920s, Fred Trump built hundreds of single-family houses and row houses in the Queens and Brooklyn boroughs of New York City, and from the late 1940s he built thousands of apartment units, mostly in Brooklyn, using federal loan guarantees designed to stimulate the construction of affordable housing. During World War II, he also built federally backed housing for naval personnel and shipyard workers in Virginia and Pennsylvania. In 1954, Fred was investigated by the Senate Banking Committee for allegedly abusing the loan guarantee program by deliberately overestimating the costs of his construction projects to secure larger loans from commercial banks, enabling him to keep the difference between the loan amounts and his actual construction costs. In testimony before the Senate committee in 1954, Fred admitted that he had built the Beach Haven apartment complex in Brooklyn for $3.7 million less than the amount of his government-insured loan. Although he was not charged with any crime, he was thereafter unable to obtain federal loan guarantees. A decade later, a New York State investigation found that Fred had used his profit on a state-insured construction loan to build a shopping center that was entirely his own property. He eventually returned $1.2 million to the state, but was thereafter unable to obtain state loan guarantees for residential projects in the Coney Island area of Brooklyn. The White House in Washington, D.C., USA. The North Portico, which faces Pennsylvania Avenue. Britannica Quiz. U.S. Presidential History Quiz. Key events in the life of Donald Trump. Key events in the life of Donald Trump. Key events in the life of U.S. President Donald Trump. Donald Trump attended New York Military Academy, 1959-64, a private boarding school, Fordham University in the Bronx, 1964-66, and the University of Pennsylvania's Wharton School of Finance and Commerce, 1966-68, where he graduated with a bachelor's degree in economics. In 1968, during the Vietnam War, he secured a diagnosis of bone spurs, which qualified him for a medical exemption from the military draft. He had earlier received 4 draft deferments for education. Upon his graduation, Trump began working full-time for his father's business, helping to manage its holdings of rental housing, then estimated at between 10,000 and 22,000 units. In 1974, he became president of a conglomeration of Trump-owned corporations and partnerships, which he later named the Trump Organization. During the 1960s and early 1970s, Trump owned housing developments in New York City, Cincinnati, Ohio, and Norfolk, Virginia, were the target of several complaints of racial discrimination against African Americans and other minority groups. In 1973, Fred and Donald Trump, along with their company, were sued by the U.S. Justice Department for allegedly violating the Fair Housing Act, 1968, in the operation of 39 apartment buildings in New York City. The Trumps initially countersued the Justice Department for $100 million, alleging harm to their reputations. The suit was settled 2 years later under an agreement that did not require the Trumps to admit guilt. Get a Britannica Premium subscription and gain access to exclusive content. Subscribe now. In the late 1970s and the 1980s, Donald Trump greatly expanded his father's business by investing in luxury hotels and residential properties and by shifting its geographic focus to Manhattan and later to Atlantic City, New Jersey. In doing so, he relied heavily on loans, gifts, and other financial assistance from his father, as well as on his father's political connections in New York City. In 1976, he purchased the decrepit Commodore Hotel near Grand Central Station under a complex profit-sharing agreement with the city that included a 40-year property tax abatement, the first such tax break granted to a commercial property in New York City. Relying on a construction loan guaranteed by his father and the Hyatt Corporation, which became a partner in the project, Trump refurbished the building and reopened it in 1980 as the 1,400-room Grand Hyatt Hotel. In 1983, he opened Trump Tower, an office, retail, and residential complex constructed in partnership with the Equitable Life Assurance Company. The 58-story building on 56th Street and 5th Avenue eventually contained Trump's Manhattan residence and the headquarters of the Trump Organization. Other Manhattan properties developed by Trump during the 1980s included the Trump Plaza Residential Cooperative, 1984, the Trump Park Luxury Condominium Complex, 1986, and the 19-story Plaza Hotel. 1988, a historic landmark for which Trump paid more than $400 million. In the 1980s, Trump invested heavily in the casino business in Atlantic City, where his properties eventually included Harrah's at Trump Plaza, 1984, later renamed Trump Plaza, Trump's Castle Casino Resort, 1985, and the Trump Taj Mahal, 1990, then the largest casino in the world. During that period, Trump also purchased the New Jersey Generals, a team in the short-lived U.S. Football League, Mar-a-Lago, a 118-room mansion in Palm Beach, Florida. Built in the 1920s by the serial heiress Marjorie Merriweather Post, a 282-foot yacht, then the world's second largest, which he named the Trump Princess, and an East Coast air shuttle service, which he called Trump Shuttle. In 1977, Trump married Ivana Zelnikova-Winklemer, a Czech model, with whom he had 3 children, Donald, Jr., Ivanka, and Eric, before the couple divorced in 1992. Their married life, as well as Trump's business affairs, were a staple of the tabloid press in New York City during the 1980s. Trump married the American actress Marla Maples after she gave birth to Trump's 4th child, Tiffany, in 1993. Their marriage ended in divorce in 1999. In 2005, Trump married the Slovene model Melania Naus, and their son, Baron, was born the following year. Melania Trump became only the second foreign-born First Lady of the United States upon Trump's inauguration as president in 2017. When the U.S. economy fell into recession in 1990, many of Trump's businesses suffered, and he soon had trouble making payments on his approximately $5 billion debt, some $900 million of which he had personally guaranteed. Under a restructuring agreement with several banks, Trump was forced to surrender his airline, which was taken over by U.S. Airways in 1992, to sell the Trump Princess, to take out second or third mortgages on nearly all of his properties, and to reduce his ownership stakes in them, and to commit himself to living on a personal budget of $450,000 a year. Despite those measures, the Trump Taj Mahal declared bankruptcy in 1991, and 2 other casinos owned by Trump, as well as his Plaza Hotel in New York City, went bankrupt in 1992. Following those setbacks, most major banks refused to do any further business with him. Estimates of Trump's net worth during this period ranged from $1.7 billion to -$900 million.